Welcome to the Weather Insights Podcast. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Linder. This is our midday update for July 7th, Sunday, July 7th, 2024. Of course, Beryl, a couple hundred miles still offshore, but now the watches and warnings have been expanded since we had our last podcast this morning, Jeff. We have tropical storm warnings inland, but then along the coast there, we still have the hurricane warnings, although with those tropical storm warnings, again, that's for sustained winds of 39 miles per hour plus. That's sustained, but we could see some hurricane force gusts, brief gusts inland. We already had the first line of showers and thunderstorms move through of the bands, outer bands of Beryl start to make its way through Houston Metro along the coastline, even down to Brownsville and Corpus Christi, getting some of those outer bands. But they have expanded the watches and warnings. Now you can see that one lone severe thunderstorm warning. That's from that outer band there, just northwest of the Beaumont area. And then a lot of coastal flood warnings, flood advisories and watches, which that's expected to be with the amount of rain, which hasn't really changed much, the amount of rain that we're expecting, but a lot going on there in that graphic, a lot to keep up with. We can see Beryl on radar now. These are the first radar images that we're showing here. And you can see what will likely be an eye later on, a well-defined eye as it moves closer to the Texas coast, right there just east of Brownsville, taking that northwesterly track, maybe a slight turn to the northwest could come later, but still a couple hundred miles out, Jeff. So plenty of time to get itself together, to get more organized and increase in intensity, and plenty of time for those rain bands to set up. And those are, even though we're seeing those bands kind of briefly move by this afternoon, that's going to be more constant as we get on into the later part of the evening.
Yeah, you can see here Beryl wrapping up. There's still some dry air getting in here, so you can see the dry air kind of wrapping around the north side now, getting into the west side, and it's still trying to flush out that dry air. And fingers crossed that this dry air can maybe help keep this more broken. But the concern is over the next 12 hours or so, as this kind of moves up due north now toward eastern Matagorda Bay or Matagorda Island, Sargent area, this is going to strengthen and continue to strengthen right up to the coast. And so conditions are very, very favorable. We're also anticipating the forward speed to increase a little bit. And so that is going to bring these strong winds now much further inland. So landfall down here in this area, it's almost not really important where it makes landfall at this point, but probably somewhere in Matagorda County. And you can see these colors here in red indicating winds of 74 up to around 100, 105 miles an hour. So that 100 is probably on the higher end range of what we could possibly see. So we're probably closer to the 70 to 90 mile an hour range in this red area. If it strengthens a little bit more, and it could, I mean, right now the forecast is for landfall at 85 miles an hour. Could it be 95? Could it be 90, 95, 100? Yes, it could. That's not far-fetched. Does it go much higher than that? I don't think so. I just don't think it has time, but it could definitely be getting into that upper end category 1, low end category 2 range. And then the faster movement now is going to spread those strong winds inland here over a big portion of southeast Texas and now the Houston metro area. So everything you see in this orange color is sustained tropical storm force winds, the threat of sustained tropical storm force winds of 40 miles an hour or so, up to 70 or up to 70, 75 miles an hour. And so we could see some pretty big issues here, especially along and west of I-45, Western Harris, Waller County, Fort Bend County, especially Austin County, Wharton, Brazoria, Matagorda County. This kind of corridor right through here is where that center and core of these stronger winds are going to track. So wind damage is certainly on the table. Trees, power lines, anything loose outside, you need to have secured. You need to move it indoors as best you can. Power outages, we're probably going to see some fairly widespread power outages, potentially some significant damage to the power infrastructure, especially down here along the coast, Brazoria, Matagorda, Wharton, possibly up into Fort Bend counties. And so not only are we talking about outages, we could be talking about outages for an extended period of time. So you need to plan for that. Charge your devices, Make sure you have some cash on hand, generators top off, make sure your fuel is topped off. All that needs to be handled this afternoon and this evening. All preparations need to be complete as we get into this evening. And this is going to come in overnight. So we're talking tropical storm force winds on the coast this evening. And
Yep.
by 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, up toward the I-10 corridor, and then probably around daybreak as we get up toward the Conroe and Huntsville area. So this is coming in tonight. Whatever you're going to do to get ready, you're going to have to do this evening or have completed by this evening. And where you're at 10 o'clock tonight is where you're going to be for the duration of the storm. Travel is going to be increasingly difficult as we get into the overnight hours into tomorrow. So be where you're going to be tonight at 10 o'clock for the duration of this event.
Yeah, don't make any plans to go tomorrow, because even after the storm passes through, there's hazards, there's down power lines, down tree limbs and things like that. Emergency personnel needs to get around. So unless you absolutely have to be out, don't be, even after the storms pass tomorrow on Monday and into Tuesday.
Yeah, and this is the storm surge. We haven't seen any changes on the storm surge. I don't think we're going to see any additional changes here. So we're kind of holding this anywhere from 4 to 6 feet along the upper Texas coast. You know, down here at Matagorda Bay, it's probably getting a little bit high now with the center track probably likely to the east. That's going to be an offshore flow here in Matagorda Bay. So Port Lavaca, Port O'Connor, these areas probably not going to get this. Maybe 1 to 3 feet down here, but if you're east of this track, so you know Matagorda, Sargent, Freeport, Surfside, Treasure Island, West End, Jamaica Beach, over towards Bolivar, High Island, it's going to be rough tonight. The tides are already starting to come up. We're going to cover all the coastal roads this evening, and then these tides are going to peak tomorrow morning with the big push that's going to come on with the landfall of the system. And then up here in Galveston Bay, 3 to 5 feet. We've been looking at some stuff this afternoon. It may be a touch higher than that, especially up here in the northern part of the bay around Morgan's Point. In Lynchburg, we could get up around 5 feet, if you will, above ground level. So that's pretty close to Alberto, maybe a foot or so higher than Alberto. That's still not a lot of significant impacts. A lot of roadway flooding, a lot of piers that are going to be flooded, a lot of park areas that are going to be flooded. The Lynchburg Ferry is going to have some issues, a lot of street flooding, but no significant structural flooding. One thing I will say, this is going to be accompanied with significant wave action. We're talking anywhere from 15 to 20 foot seas out here in the Gulf that are going to be coming into the beaches, 8 to 10 foot in the bay. And so this is going to, the tides itself on top of with the wave action is going to do a number on the beaches here in the dune system. So we could see some breaching and overtopping of the dune system down here along the upper Texas coast as we get into tomorrow. Good news is this does not linger like it did with Alberto. The tides will peak tomorrow morning and they'll be falling as the winds come down. And that's the other thing I forgot to mention about the winds. This is going to come in quick tonight, and it is going to be over south of I-10 by, say, midday tomorrow. And by tomorrow evening, this is going to be out of this area. So this is not going to linger. We're not going to have impacts going for days and days or anything like that. We're gonna have a pretty fast hit tonight, tomorrow morning, and then the winds, anyways, passing on off to the northeast. Some of the rainfall might linger a little bit into Monday night and Tuesday. We'll just have to kind of see how some of these bands work out on the southern side, but really no changes right now to the rainfall forecast. And for the most part, this is probably a manageable rainfall event. We'll have to keep an eye on things. We'll have to keep an eye for any training of bands or anything like that. But right now, these totals we will be able to handle without significant issues.
Yeah, the outliers can always, in any tropical system, you can always have 10 to 12 inch outliers, like you mentioned with the banding, Jeff. But right now, yeah, that doesn't look terrible. So that's the good news. And it keeps narrowing too. That tongue of the heavier rain has narrowed a little bit more. So that is certainly good news. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, join us for the next Weather Insights podcast later this evening, where we'll have another update on Beryl. Join us then.